Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says, wanted a collective national endeavour. India is hit by a health crisis. People of our country had never witnessed something like this in their lifetimes. The scale of infection is unparalleled. During this crisis, where there is no one fixed way to find the solution, the central government and the state government both may find it difficult to organize things. So they might commit certain mistakes during this process. And in case they do commit mistakes, they should identify it, admit their failures, and also change the course of future action. So what are these changes we need to bring about to take this infection head on and ultimately reduce the curve with respect to the COVID-19? What are these changes? The first change that we need to bring about is setting aside the political ideologies. What do we mean by it? There are different political parties. There might be one political party at the center. There might be another political party which is heading government in the state as well. So they are having different political ideologies. These different political ideologies should not compete against each other. It is not a fight or a clash about who is good or better. It is not about who is best or bad. It is about finding solution to this growing problem. It is not the right time to find out whether the left is right, the right is right, or the center is right. It is time to set aside all these political differences and tackle the health crisis that we are witnessing right now. So what we require is collective conscience, collective efforts, so that we would be able to overcome this very issue, so that ultimately the health crisis is reduced. So what are we supposed to do? Irrespective of the political ideologies, the political parties and the government will have to keep their minds opened, which means who is giving the suggestion will not matter as long as the solution does work. So irrespective of where it is coming from, which government it is coming from, who is giving it, from where it is coming, all that the government will have to do is to set aside the political ideologies and keep its open mind, so that solutions can be taken irrespective of the political ideology and ensure that this health crisis is overcome. Followed by this, what we require is the center state cooperation. What do we mean by this center state cooperation? When you look at this center state cooperation, it is not a clash between the central government and the federal government established at the state level. We have the division of powers at the central government. We have division of powers which also gives enough powers to the state governments as well. So what it means is that states will also have to learn from the central government. The central government will have to take positives from the state government, and the states within themselves as a cooperative federalism, competitive federalism can also learn amongst each other. So it is not the hegemony of the center over the states. Instead, it is about mutual cooperation. I make mistake, I learn from it. If I commit the mistake, the center has to say the same thing to the state, and the state governments will also have to give positive inputs, and this will have to be taken up by the central government, so that there is ultimately reduction in the COVID-19 cases. Followed by this is centralization should be completely avoided. When there is growing concentration of power, what it can lead to is the top-down approach. But COVID-19 is not such an issue where top-down approach can be imposed when it comes to the community. So what we require is decentralization. Followed by this, there is a growing flight for the migrant workers. People are settled in other states as well. For example, people from the region of Uttar Pradesh might be settled in Kerala. Why? Because they seek economic prosperity. So what they do, they move from their hometown, they look and settle down in another state. But with this COVID-19, the migrant workers have faced massive troubles as well. They had to walk long distances because of this 21-day lockdown period. So the flight and the issues that with respect to the migrant workers will have to be understood, and all measures will have to be taken simultaneously by the central government as well as the state government. one such beautiful example is with respect to the state government of Telangana. The state government of Telangana did give up a notification and also announced in the press conference that all those people from different state apart from the state of Telangana will be taken care as brothers and sisters belonging to the same state. So irrespective of which party is in picture, all these migrant workers will have to be provided basic amenities so that they do not have to go back to their home states. The government further will have to start spending generously on the welfare scheme. The government has already sanctioned about 1.7 lakh crores for the welfare of the people. But there are few political pundits as well as economists who feel that this money is not enough to fight the COVID-19 and the flight of the migrants. So what needs to be done? Money required for these welfare schemes has to be recalculated, and the central government needs to spend liberally on the hard hit labor sector. Followed by this is the reassurance to the people of India. This is something unprecedented which is not witnessed by the people of India. They are fighting their own battles. They have listened to the government of India. They have restricted their movements and they are within their houses as well. There are some incidences where people are traveling as well, but most of the people are complying by the rules of the government. During this process, the government will also have to give reassurance to the people of India, both at the central level as well as at the state level. It is not only you who is suffering, it is we the government who will stand by you, and we would ultimately sail through this whole issue. So it is this reassurance that has to be given by the central government and the state government. Followed by this, there are social tensions that are prevalent in the society. There are religious communal issues that are surfacing. Fake news are spreading like the virus itself, and this is ultimately dividing the social fabric in the society. We are already fighting the virus. We are already impacted by this virus. If another issue in the form of communal violence does rake up, the social fabric is disturbed and India will have to fight two issues. On one side, it is the communal flare-up. On the other side, it is the virus. So what should we do? We should verify whether this particular information given to us, sent to us, is fact or not. So fact checking becomes a very important in order for us to reduce the social tensions. So the social fabric has to be kept intact so that we do not have to face another issue in the present scenario. So what we need to do is to come up with a collective national effort, whether it is the government, whether it is the private, whether it is the civil society or individuals. It is not one single responsibility, but all stakeholders. A collective effort and approach is required for all of us to overcome this issue, is what this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about ceasefire violation by Pakistan. What is a ceasefire violation? Ceasefire violations are essentially cross-border shelling and firing where along the line of control and across the international border by Pakistan. Let's look at some of the statistics as given under this article. There are about 3,479 violations for the year 2019, which works out to be almost 10 every single day. Now the question is, why does this ceasefire happen? Before we understand why ceasefire happens, we have to understand what is a line of control, what is an international border. An international border is one where the border disputes are not an issue. These are settled issues and these are ultimately the boundaries where it is segregated into Pakistan and India. Then there is line of control. What is this line of control? This is a region or demarcation in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Kindly note, Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India. The entire state is the part of India, but some region in Jammu and Kashmir, which is called as Pakistan occupied Kashmir, is illegally occupied. So a demarcation in the state of Jammu and Kashmir is what is called as line of control. Now the question is, why is there a ceasefire violation? This is because of multiple reasons. Let's take the example of the line of the control. The line of control has a clear demarcation. This is present on the map. but when it comes to the ground reality and its implementation, this is not seen in real-time scenario, which means troops sometimes enter into each other's areas, they enter into the territory of the other, and ultimately this might provoke violence as well. So what is put up clearly on the map is not the reality when it comes to the implementation. So what we need to understand is that there is no formal border treaty when it comes to the line of control. Added to this, the terrain itself creates its own complications. How? There is genuine confusion as to where the line of control lies when it comes to the ground reality. Especially this happens after the winter snows or when there is a torrential rainfall as well. So because of the confusion, because one party enters into the territory of the other, this is what is creating violence, and this is what is leading to the ceasefire violation. Ceasefire violations can also picture in when political leaders happen to step into Jammu and Kashmir on important national days like the Independence Day and Republic Day. So when there are national leaders who are heading to Jammu and Kashmir on these national important days, this is where ceasefire violations in the past have also increased. And at the same time, Pakistan also finds it useful to keep the Kashmir issue alive. So whenever there is a ceasefire violation, the media starts putting this information outside. So in order to keep this Jammu and Kashmir crisis in boiling, Pakistan also uses it as a strategy. Ceasefire violations can also result when local commanders want to seek revenge for the casualties. Let's say there is a violation and the local commanders have lost their soldiers. So because of the emotional connect that they had with their soldiers, triggered by the emotional state and frustration of the local commanders because they have lost their soldiers due to the violation of the other party, this can also result in the ceasefire violations, and all these local commanders avenging towards this type of revenge was usually witnessed in the year 1990. Followed by this, we have a protocol that new construction should not be happening on the borders of India as well as Pakistan. Now let's say there is a construction that does come up, new posts and defense work does take place along the line of control, and new construction does appear. It is during this period that ceasefire violation also happens. Another factor that many officers also claim is because of moral ascendancy over the other side. What is this moral ascendancy? This basically means that Pakistan is trying to project that its army is better than India. So this is basically saying that their army and defense equipments is better. This was what DGMO Vinod Bhatia had said, that this is about the superiority of the army. So basically moral ascendancy is nothing but claiming the superiority of that particular army over that of the other state. In this particular game, it is about domination. So because Pakistan army believes that they can dominate over the Indian army, they start shelling fire is an other proposal given by DGMO Vinod Bhatia. This is not the reality, but this is what is the claim according to moral ascendancy. So what has been the India's views? When it comes to India, India feels that this unprovoked firing from Pakistan is basically done to provide cover for the militants who have been infiltrating into Jammu and Kashmir. So India believes when Pakistan has to infiltrate terrorists into the state of Jammu and Kashmir, it starts firing across the line of control. So this is what India believes. So what is the inference that we can draw? These escalations have the potential not only to spark a bilateral issue, diplomatic issue, political crisis, but it may escalate into an ongoing crisis in the near future, and ultimately India and Pakistan's relationship can suffer. People living in the nearby areas across the international border in the line of control become the ceasefire victims. In Jammu and Kashmir alone, according to the Indian Home Ministry, there are about 600 villages. Out of these 600 villages, up to 450 villages are vulnerable because of this ceasefire violation. These ceasefire violations often result in displacement of these villagers from their villages. So these are the inference that we can draw. What are the measures that needs to be taken by India and Pakistan to stop this ceasefire violation? For this, what we need to come up is formalize the 2003 ceasefire agreement. What is this 2003 ceasefire agreement? This basically gives certain guidelines. It says what needs to be followed, what are the do's and don'ts, rules, guidelines and principle that needs to be followed when it comes to ceasefire violation. So there will be neutral observers from India and Pakistan, and there will be establishment of a joint commission. If this particular ceasefire agreement is signed as espoused under 2003 agreement, then this issue can comparatively be reduced. So this would enable the two sides to better manage the border and significantly reduce the ad hoc nature of the current arrangements. India and Pakistan could also explore the possibility of developing joint standard operating procedures. There are a number of issues between India and Pakistan. One is to do with unintentional crossing over of the people, tackling movements at night. Then it also speaks about accidental firing as well. For all these issues, we need to have the standard operating procedure. In case people happen to enter into the other's territory unintentionally, or there is a firing that has happened accidentally, or when there is movement at night by the people across the line of control. For all these things, in case we are able to have a standard operating procedure, that will also reduce the ceasefire violation. There is also something called as the hotline that has been established between the Director Generals of Military Operations. Whenever the situation turns volatile, it is these two DGMOs who come up together to reduce the impact of ceasefire violations. This should also have more applicability in the near future. Diplomatic channels, high commissioners and deputy high commissioners can also be called in so that these violations can comparatively be reduced. And at the same time, what we also need to do is, wherever possible, exercising the option of precise, surgical, preventive action against such infiltration can be taken up by using all the technology such as drones, which might be able to reduce the impact of this ceasefire violation. So what is the conclusion that we can draw? Saving the life of the soldiers and civilians involves the hard work of negotiating these agreements, speaking to Pakistan, entering into an agreement, and also creating incentives for the other side so that they are ready to cooperate, and ultimately reducing the ceasefire violation across the international borders as well as the line of control. Now let's look into the next article. This article says COVID-19 and the crumbling world order. The world has seen two world wars, and it took years to overcome the bloodshed. New political boundaries were drawn, economic institutions were established, and ultimately control was restricted to few rich countries. The world currently is hit by a virus. Though there is no bloodshed, once we overcome this pandemic, we may have to confront new political and social realities. Now let's look at institutions as given under this article. It speaks about the United Nations Security Council. Institutions like the United Nations Security Council was created to push the military and the hegemonic agenda of the rich countries. The author here goes on to say that they were not serving the humanity, but they were serving the agenda of the rich countries. Why? Because this particular crisis has hit all continents and major countries. Ultimately, the United Nations Security Council, as there is break of peace in all countries, should have called for a meeting immediately and should have addressed all these key concerns surfacing from this virus. But what did the United Nations Security Council do? It took many days to call for a meeting, and humanity was not in picture of the United Nations Security Council. So what this pandemic does is that it puts a testimony to the United Nations Security Council's insignificance. This is on the global level. Then there are regional institutions like SAARC as well as the European Union. The SAARC as an institution was long dead, and there was initiative taken by Narendra Modi government as well. But this initiative was short-lived. Followed by this is the European Union mandate. What was this European Union mandate? Was the cooperation between the countries of the Europe. But ultimately, European Union was clueless and countries within Europe had to find solution inwards, and they had to come up with their own solution for this pandemic COVID-19. So what this means is the global institution has failed and all the regional institutions have failed, and they are not able to take on the challenges of the year 2020. But one country that is dominating and making inroads is China. So the author here speaks about the impact that China is able to create world over. Its manufacturing entities were silent for about 2 months, but its production has increased in the last couple of weeks. So the Chinese manufacturing sector is completely recovering and is also exporting its products world over. It has also offered medical aid and expertise to couple of countries world over. This includes countries like Italy, Spain, and also Iran as well. Followed by this, it is also cooperating with its arch rival Japan to provide all kinds of assistance as well. This is on the government front. Jack Ma, who happens to be the richest man of China, is the vanguard and firepower heading the private sector's fight against the COVID-19. Further, the Chinese government is also pushing the Huawei 5G trials across multiple countries and is also bargaining for the tests to be conducted by its company Huawei. Going forward with the One Belt One Road initiative, we may witness a world with the Chinese political and economic characteristics. This is on the international front. On the domestic and national front, countries may begin to close their borders, start looking inwards, and they may also localize the manufacturing facilities. The MNC control which we currently have world over and globally will be completely restricted, and what we will see in the near future is the state control. As of now, you see multinational companies like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Apple commanding things world over, and this will be replaced by state control where government will have complete control about its direction. So the state may further consolidate the power and may become a surveillance state, and this whole exercise will give legitimacy to reduce the unforeseen damage is what the author is trying to say. Another undesirable outcome is spike when it comes to racism and forms of discrimination. So what is the racism that the author is speaking about? Recently, there was a Manipuri woman who was called as coronavirus. This is something pathetic and abysmal that we witness in Delhi. So such incidences may come up in the near future, but kindly note such acts is prohibited under law and such people can be penalized by the law of the land. Then there could be discrimination as well. How? Currently what we see with COVID-19 is social distancing that needs to be followed between people. This social distancing in the near future may lead to undesirable social practices, leading to practices such as untouchability as well. The social distancing on the health front is completely fine, but this may give a social practice violation like the untouchability is what the author is trying to communicate. At the same time, there could be a possibility of class segregation and there will be hygiene segregation, and these incidences may grow sharper on the domestic front. And further, travel restrictions would also legitimize border walls in some conservative countries as well. So what this COVID-19 has done, it has shown that the world organizations have failed. China is dominating and we would have more state control, and we could also see some social issues within the boundaries of the country. So what will happen in the near future is what we need to see, and let's wait and watch what could be the social and the economic crisis that which will spiral after this issue has settled. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about the sufferings of the disabled people due to the impact of the COVID-19. Under this article, let's compartmentalize into three different compartments. One is with respect to the blind people, second is with respect to the deaf people, and third is with respect to all the disabled category people. First, let us discuss about the visually impaired or the blindness community. Most of these people's activity depends on touch. But in COVID-19, what we are instructed is not to touch things, and even if you are touching it, you will have to sanitize it. The next important thing that we are taught in COVID-19 is social distancing. This again cannot be practiced by the blind community. Why? Because whenever they have to travel or cross the roads, they follow the principle of joining together and crossing the roads. So when it comes to the feel of touch and also when it comes to the social distancing, they may not be able to implement is one such concern. Now when it comes to the hearing impaired people, these people will not be able to hear. So what is the problem right now? They would not be able to get any information whatsoever. When it comes to the blind people, they are not able to see, so they are not able to get information. Under this particular compartment, these people are not able to hear, so again there is a concern. In most of the cases, what these hearing impaired people do is to understand what the other person is speaking by lip reading. But what is happening in most of the cases is that people are covering their faces with masks. Because they are covering their faces with masks, they are not able to lip read is another concern. And at the same time, sign language interpreters in television channels are also not provided, and as a result, the deaf community, the hearing impaired people are the major sufferers. Followed by this, the physically disabled people will not be able to move from one place to another because the assistant providing people are not present in the present scenario. Then there is Down syndrome people who have to be fed, and unfortunately the assistance that were provided by other people is missing in the present scenario. And people who are suffering from mental health issues cannot comprehend their messages. In case they have any suffering, they are not able to say their mental issues to the people so that they would be able to address it. So what are the concerns that we are generally witnessing? These people are not able to eat properly, they are suffering from stress, and in case the disabled person is a woman, she may face other sexual exploitations as well. And people suffering from communication disabilities don't know how to express their problems as well. And transportation, which was provided to the disabled community, is also not provided in the present scenario, as all the transport is suspended by the public transport system. So what are the measures that one needs to take up? On the government front, what we have to realize is when it comes to seeing or when it comes to hearing, there is accessibility issue. So whatever is the accessible format that is required for the blind sector, that which is required for the deaf community, such accessible format will have to be provided by the government. And at the same time, the civil society should also volunteer and take up the responsibility of providing the food and cooking for this disabled community. Followed by this, the health facilities will also have to be provided to these people. So what are the health facilities that we are looking at? One is decreasing the waiting time in hospitals for all these people. Followed by this, mobile health teams will have to visit these people and will also have to ensure that all these disability issues are addressed as well. Followed by this, a dedicated helpline will also have to be set up so that the medical team can reach up to them and help to find all possible solutions for this disabled community. So a country's development is measured by its social support and inclusive policy. So a multi-stakeholder approach by the government, by the civil society, and by the health facilities provided by the health sector is the need of the hour, is what this article all about. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Gatka is a martial art form from the state of Punjab. Why have we taken this particular practice question? Because of the reference given in this article. Nihangs are a form of Sikh warrior sect. So these Nihangs are the descendants of the army that has been raised by Guru Gobind Singh to protect the Sikh community. So kindly remember, this martial art is associated with Sikhism. It uses weapons like the flexible sword, spear, stick as well as chakra. This Gatka can be practiced either as a sport, that is Khela, or as a ritual. So kindly remember, it is believed to have originated when 6th Sikh Guru Hargobind adopted Kripan for self-defense during Mughal era, and 10th Guru Gobind Singh made it compulsory for everyone to use weapons for their self-defense. Now let's look into the next practice question. Pattachitra refers to, it is a painting style and one of the most important art forms of Odisha. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference made under this article. So Pattachitra is a style of painting and is one of the oldest and most popular art forms of Odisha. Patta here stands for cloth and Chitra means picture, and most of these paintings depict the stories of Hindu deities. And apart from paintings, Pattachitra artwork is also widely used on cotton and silk saris. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following earthquake prone areas fall under Zone 5 seismic zone? Is it Rann of Kutch? Is it Himachal Pradesh? Is it Sikkim, National Capital Territory of Delhi, and Andaman and Nicobar? The answer to this is 1, 2 and 5. Why? Sikkim and National Capital Territory of Delhi do not fall under Zone 5. It falls under Zone 4. Now let's look into the explanation. So this is what the zoning is all about. When it comes to zoning 2, it is least active seismic zones. Then when it comes to Zone 3, it is moderate seismic zone. Then Zone 4, it is high seismic zone, and Zone 5 is highest seismic zone area. So National Capital Territory of Delhi and Sikkim falls under Zone 4. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to India's culture and tradition, what is Kalaripayattu? It is nothing but an ancient martial art and a living tradition in some parts of South India. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference made under this article. Now let's look into the mains practice question. Overcoming the negative impact of COVID-19 pandemic will require collective effort at all levels of government and by all sections of the society. Explain. What are the possible reasons for ceasefire violations along India-Pakistan border? Suggest measures to address these challenges. So please write all your answers on the comment section so that you guys can have a peer review and also come up with constructive criticism. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.